Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to show you how to take your mix from this to really big with one plugin. And the idea is called clipping. Now, I didn't understand this a long time ago, but now I understand that clipping basically fills out the sound in your song. You don't need to push clipping to where it's super saturated or distorted, but you can make clipping fill in those gaps. I'll show you how to do it creatively right inside your DAW. We'll start with FL Studio. We'll move to a third-party plugin. But let's hop over to the DAW and show you the technique. So again, how to use clipping. So here's a little quick example. I'm going to turn on the clipping, and I'll reverse engineer this for you. So this is how I approached it. And let's turn this off. Okay, so what clipping does is it fills out those gaps. Let's turn off this clipper and show you how empty it looks. So what I'm going to show you is on this spectrum graph, look at the purple stuff. That's the lesser energy. The orange stuff is the more intense energy, more focused energy. What you'll notice is after the clipper, it starts turning yellow and orange. That's because we're filling in those gaps. Okay, so this is what I mean by filling in those gaps. I mean, harmonically speaking, we're filling in those frequency gaps. So here's without the clipper. I just want you to, I'm not going to talk. I want you to look at the waveform and how weak it looks as far as color intensity. See how it has so many gaps and black areas? So now what happens if we add the clipper? Night and day. It creates a bigger image because it exaggerates some of the harmonic content and makes it audible. There's something called the Fletcher-Munson curve. Here's what it looks like. This basically just shows you that at around 500 hertz to about 5 kilohertz, that's where our ear is most sensitive. This is why the mixing engineers tell you that the mix lives in the mids. It's because our ear is built to hear these easier than other frequencies. So about from 500 to 5 kilohertz, we hear that zone a lot easier than we hear any other zone in music. So what we need to do for these other zones to make them heard and felt is give them upper frequency content so that we know it lives in the mix. And this is why we use things like clippers, because clippers will take a sound, let's say 50, it will multiply it 50 times 2, the second harmonic would be 100. 50 times 3, the third harmonic would be 150. And it keeps multiplying until we get up into the frequencies of 500 hertz to about 5 kilohertz where it can be heard easier. So that's what we're doing when we're clipping, is we're making these lower frequencies, for the most part, more easily heard in the higher registry. And this is called the Fletcher-Munson curve. And again, this is why mixing engineers tell you that the mixes live in the mids. This is the zone where we're built to hear a little bit easier. Biology says that it's because of the baby's voice and, prolonging your genetics and different things. We want to keep the baby safe. So that's why our human voice rests usually between this zone. Okay. So let's go back to the DAW. Okay, so how do you do this inside of FL Studio? What you can do is just run your entire mix or your drums. I've run the entire mix, vocals included. You could start with what's called the Fruity Soft Clipper. Now I'll show you two different methods. Okay, the first method is turning your threshold all the way up. This is the most common method. Now most people leave it at that. They just turn the soft clipper up and that's it. What you need to do is drive the signal going into the soft clipper. The goal is, let me go full screen with this one. Let me double check to make sure my cam works. Okay, so the goal is, I can't even see myself. The goal is to take these rounded edges like a sine wave, take these rounded edges and make them more pulse-like and square. So again, the goal is to make a round edge, let's do it this way, more round edge, okay, into a square or a more linear edge. And I'll show you in the DAW since you guys are so attentive. I appreciate you. Please like the video so we can help more producers around the world. Let me show you the science behind this just quickly. Let's load up the 3X OSC. Let's pull down oscillators 2 and 3. We're going to run a sine wave. This is just the most pure sound frequency, a sine wave. It's one frequency. Okay, so when we hear frequency, we usually think it's one thing happening. But in real life, when you hear my voice, for example, it's multiple frequencies. It's not just one frequency. It's a lot of frequencies. So what happens if we run the sine wave and look at the, I'm not going to speak, I'm going to turn off my mic. I want you to look at the linear line of the sine wave. Okay, if you look at this graph, you see this horizontal line at the bottom. That's because the sine wave is only one frequency. Now, what happens if we change the sine wave into a different waveform, like a pulse wave or a square wave, we should say? Look at all these horizontal lines. Those are called harmonics. So the difference between a sine wave and a pulse wave, a square wave, for example, is the harmonic content of the actual sound. That's what makes the sound wave sound the way it does. It's the harmonic content that it includes. So what we're doing with our song, what I'm trying to show you is that clipping takes rounded edges and it makes it more square. Okay, so we're taking this single frequency and we're making it more buzzy so that we have more frequency content, which fills out the entire picture. That's what we're doing when we're clipping. So let's push this even harder by adding a parametric EQ2. The drum loop also is from our Ultimate Producer Stash. Just go to premium.busyworksbeats.com to learn more about the Ultimate Producer Stash. It's in the drum folder under loops, drum loops, and it's the R&B drum loop I added underneath this track. So what we're doing right now, the chain is a parametric EQ2 going into a Fruity Soft Clipper. So we have the Fruity parametric EQ2. And what I'm doing is on the far left, this is a gain knob. We're going to use this to boost the levels and the signal going into the Fruity Soft Clipper. Okay, so as Paranoia, I'm going to check OBS, make sure we're okay. Sometimes my hotkeys work, sometimes they don't. Okay, so it's going to turn this gain up going into the Fruity Soft Clipper. Now as I'm doing this, I'm actually going to show you the graph. This is very important. Now that you understand what a clipper is doing, look in the graph and look at how much more yellow and more intense it becomes. Right now the beat's like a pink color because it's less intense. Let's keep pushing the gain into that soft clipper with the hard clipping. Notice how this track is starting to fill out with that yellow, intense energy. Okay, so you could do it that way. Most people forget to boost. If you want to emulate like a tape effect, what you could do is add an EQ boost before you're going into the clipper. So if you want to get like an older type sound, what they would do is have a bias. So they would EQ going into the hot output. So let's EQ the low end and then boost this whole thing. It's going to give us a different tone. So don't be afraid to EQ before going into a soft clipper. Now you can do all this in one with the T-Rex Classic Clipper. The only thing I guess it doesn't do is the EQ portion. I forgot one thing with the soft clipper. There's another mode. If you turn it to the left as far as the threshold, it will act differently. It has a different tone. So let's do both with the boost. And so start from scratch. Let's start from scratch, okay, and then let's boost it with some gain, and then we'll do the EQ boost. Here's before, and I'm cranking it going in. So you can push pretty heavy. I'm pushing, 15 dB going into the clipper. So I don't want you to be afraid to turn your drums up for the longest time. I got to look y'all on the face. For the longest time, I was not pushing my drums. Whoops. I was not pushing my drums. Let me lock this so I don't do that again. Okay, I was not pushing my drums to be as hard as they could because I didn't understand about clipping and like intentional clipping versus the wobble clip that you hear sometimes. I didn't know about all that. So what I'm showing you is just how to make your drum sound way bigger without buying a bunch of plugins. You could actually do it with the stock. Let's head back to FL. And I'm going to show you how to do this with third party. But before we get to the third party, let's boost this, but with the EQ curve this time. And usually because that low frequency energy is more intense than the higher energy because we need to boost it so much, it hits the clipper first. So now you're getting a whole different sound because it's rattling the clipper and it creates those upper harmonics, which now interfere with it. It has, what's it called? Wave interference. try different EQ curves. Now this is experimental, but let's try boosting. Let's say, what is this? 200 hertz. You can get really unique tones just pushing different things through that. So that way you can create a whole, that's what tone means. Different overtones, different upper harmonics. Now let's use the T-Rax clipper. And I like this one better, it just has a better sound to me. This is just my own preference. Okay, so this is before, let's crank it on default. So you can push it pretty hard. I'm pushing it, what, 3 dB of gain reduction it's taken out? Let's switch the mode to hard clipping to the right. Creates a more harsh, bitey sound. It creates more upper harmonic content. Let's push it. So some may be asking, okay, how hard do you push it? There's a level where it begins to sound too scrapey. So try this with the snare first and just push the snare, and you'll notice after a while the snare will sound, instead of snappy, it will sound scrapey. So that's where we can't tell the transient energy because everything's chopped off and made linear into that square wave type shape. So that's where you usually want to back it off because you're losing the transient power. Okay, so let's put it on the other mode, the soft clipper side, the more rounded side. You can push this pretty hard. Now, I'm trying to give you maybe a difference. What we could do is, I'm going to record this into Edison. So let's do a before and after Edison, just to show you how hard we could push this stuff and look at the transient energy. Let's record into Edison. Now this is like the final lesson because this will show you how to get loudness. Maybe I'll make another video about loudness. Let's record input. Now watch as I turn the clipper on. Let me change the settings back to normal so we're not blowing our ears out. Okay, now watch as I turn on the clipper. I want you to look at the waveform in Edison. Look at these little pointy parts in Edison. Let me open up both windows. Give me a second. All right, so here's without the plugin. Now I want you to pay attention to the pointy parts of this audio. That's the dead giveaway as to what clipping is doing, and also tape saturation. Let's turn this on. We're gonna crank it now. I'm gonna use hard clipping. See, with the clipper, it cuts those transients off. I'm exaggerating this, but now you can see we don't have those pointy parts in the audio, which gives us more room to pull this up in volume. And that's the power of clipping. We can shave off those transients. I'm gonna pull it back just to show you how pointy it used to be. Now it's kind of, the volume's not matching, but that's the goal, is to make it more squared off. So now that we can go in, you could visually see it even from this far away. Look how much headroom we created just from squaring that off. If I could read roughly, it says negative 12 dB all the way up till negative 6 dB. We created 6 dB of headroom, which allows us to add more plugins to fill up that 6 dB of space. 6 dB of headroom by adding a clipper. This is why your mixes get louder when you clip, because you're creating that headroom, that difference of 6 dB. Then from this point, you would run it through a limiter. Now I'm just gonna show you quickly. This is in a mastering tutorial. We're just gonna clip it, and then we're gonna clip, and then we're gonna go through a limiter. And then we'll wrap this up. So I'm just gonna use L2 to be fast. Not the limiter I would use. Actually, L2 doesn't work on here. Let's try Ozone Maximizer. Where's it at? Maximizer, here we go. Now this also has a soft clipper section in it if you wanna use that. And you can't notice because it's so clean. Because all we really did was take out the transient energy. So I'm gonna A/B all this stuff into Edison. Let's A/B all this stuff into Edison. Let's do it without. Give me a second. Wait, I'm trying to figure out. Oh, it's playing the Edison. I'm like, what is it playing here? Okay, let's start from scratch. Let's record. So again, let's go no plugins and let's start turning all the plugins on. So here's no plugins. I want you to pay attention to that transient energy. Let's run it through the clipper to get rid of those pointy parts of the audio. It's hard to do all this in one fell swoop. Okay, so I got rid of some of the pointiness. You can push it harder to get rid of more. I'll exaggerate. Just so. Okay, now let's run it through the maximizer. All right, so these are the benefits of clipping. And hopefully you understand it now from all the angles, from the harmonics to the, let me see y'all up close. So hopefully you can understand clipping from the harmonics, which is the vertical stacking of frequencies, to the, changing the circular stuff to the more linear square stuff, and how that influences the harmonic content. And then how that shaves off headroom to give you a lot more room to add mastering plugins to boost up the sound and make it however you want. So let's just visually look at the waveform. And again, the quick synopsis is, you see all this pointy stuff? That's before the plugins. Then I started adding a clipper. You see it gets very linear because we're chopping off that transient energy, turning those sine waves into more square waves by clipping it. It goes above a certain point and it makes it linear. We're chopping information off. Then I pushed it a little harder through the clipper to give us more headroom, because now we're going from -8 up to our peak was -3. So we gained 5 dB of headroom. And then I ran it through a limiter to make it louder, to fill all that space. And that's how you can get your mixes a lot louder with one simple concept called clipping. So hopefully you like this. We have free mixing courses. Just go to premium.busyworksbeats.com. I'll leave a link below. Subscribe if you're new. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace.